Jaguars head coach Doug Pederson said that finger pointing can be dangerous, and I totally agree with him. And at this point, ain't no need for all that. We'll talk about it here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you that we are everywhere where you can see and hear podcasts. Make sure you check into those locations and tap in each and every day so you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. Hello to the everydayers. Let you know right now what we're going to talk about today. The fix. How do the Jaguars begin their fix? First, you have to understand that losing exposes it all. If you're willing to pay attention, we'll hit that right smack in the middle of the show. And then, what is the problem? That's about the $1 million question, right? That we're all trying to figure out. Even head coach Doug Pederson. Newsflash. I don't think he knows what it is, to be honest. And I think if he does know, or if he does have an idea, he doesn't know how to fix it. And if he does have an idea and he knows how to fix it, he might not have the capability to fix it because his hands are tied. Or maybe you can't fix it if it's you. Let's talk about it, man. Let's get into it. We're going to address a lot of things today. Went to the press conference. Doug Pederson's statement, one of the things that he said was finger pointing is dangerous. They were asking him about Ryan Nielsen. It sounds like he wasn't ready to blame Ryan Nielsen for any of that. But I'm not going to even worry about trying to figure stuff like that out anymore. I think it's irrelevant. Someone said, ask tough questions. Well, there's a reason why I didn't say a thing today, but maybe I'll address that later at another time. But I will tell you this today. I probably wouldn't have addressed anything anyway because of the way that the press conference went. And I was sitting there thinking about it. And what's the point? I'm not going to kick a man when he's down. I heard a good person. I heard a good human being. I heard a person that has been trying for the last 3 years to win as many football games as he can. I heard a person that don't want to be fired. I heard a person that never wanted to be fired. I heard a person that tried his hardest and tried his best. Did everything he could within his power to put a winning team. It didn't or doesn't do him any good to be okay with losing. It doesn't do him any good to lose and think that it's okay. It's not. So I disagree with anybody that says those types of things. Does he handle everything the way you or I think he should? Probably not, but he's the only one in that job. You and I, we're not there. We don't know what he's put into it. We don't know what I think to this moment, everything that he's done as a coach, he thought was going to be a formula for winning. You'd be a fool to think anything else. So I think sometimes we get upset, we get emotional about these coaches and what it is that they do, that we somehow seem to think that they were trying to fail because it's easier for us to imagine in some sort of form that they're just not as good as you think. And that's what it is. When it comes down to it, the Jacksonville Jaguars are not a very, very good team. There's no reason to kick him when he's down. There's no reason to. The only time I don't mind people kicking Doug is when he gets smart with people at press conferences and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, really? But even with that, last week I said when he said that we wouldn't understand it anyway, I told people the one thing about that is he's emotional. He probably won't say something like that Monday or Wednesday when he talks to everybody. And sure enough, today he wasn't rude to people. He's never been that way. Doug, in fact, has always been extremely conscientious and courteous and very, very professional every time that I've had the chance to see him and talk to him. Gave me a head nod today, gave it right back to him. Other than that, it doesn't matter. And that's what I want to convey here. You don't have to be angry at someone if they just haven't done a good enough job. I don't call players busts if the player did exactly if they got injured or they played as hard as they can, they just weren't good enough. They weren't a bust. They just weren't good enough. And we get the opportunity sometimes to have a front row seat at someone's failure. And trust me, someone that has been good enough to get to the NFL has been close to being the best their entire life. At some point, they were the best player on their team. I don't care at what point. And sometimes that level goes all the way up to college when these guys get drafted. They were the best player on their team. And then when this happens and it goes bad, unless they blew their opportunity or were lazy or had something going on off the field, I don't call them bust. I only call them bust when they squander an opportunity. When they, and I'm different from a lot of guys in that way. So I'm also not going to sit here and say a coach that has reached the pinnacle of his profession is an idiot. I'm not going to sit here and say that a coach that reached the pinnacle of his profession and won a Super Bowl doesn't know what a process of success looks like. I'm not going to say that a coach who coached under Andy Reid for a lot of years and learned and was able to come into this organization and turn it around and have 2 straight 9-8 seasons after this organization hadn't seen very many winning seasons at all. I'm not going to cast any aspersions on his character. And here's the rest of the story. But I'm also not going to trick myself into believing or fooling myself into believing that what I see is something that I don't see. So I ask again, what's the problem? The problem is they're a bad football team. They have good players at certain spots. So does every other bad team in the National Football League. Doesn't mean anything. They are a bad collection of 53 guys. And if you don't think that's the case, okay, let me rephrase that. They're a bad collection of 53 guys, practice squad with the current coaching staff and scouting staff and personnel staff that they have right now. If you don't believe me, they're 4-7, they're 4-13 in their last 17 games. The proof is in the pudding. So it's not personal. And I want people to take the personal aspect of out of this. Even with Trent Baalke, it's not personal. Trent might have said 1 or 2 things that I thought was weird, but I don't have any hard evidence that he's a horrible person who doesn't want to win. Of course he does. Everybody wants to win. Everybody thinks that they're doing the right thing. We just have to come to the realization that there are some people that are just not as good at their job as other people. If you went to a barbershop and there's 10 barbers in there, you got the nicest dude on earth. If he can't cut hair, you ain't sitting in this chair. And if he does, that's on you. You saw the evidence. You saw it. Why did you go over there and sit there and now you want to fuss and argue with a bad barber? Don't do it. Right? So we've seen enough of Doug and Trent Baalke to realize that I don't want them to continue to be the coach of the team that I want to win. It's just that simple. It's not personal. Everybody was telling me I was going under pressure today. Get him. Y'all know better than that. That's not my style. I ain't here for no gotcha moments. There was no reason to kick a man down and attack him. He wasn't attacking anybody else. He was nice. The only reason I get on people, and this is what we'll get into in the Losing Exposes It All segment in just a second. The only thing I get on people is about is if you pour water on my head and tell me it's raining. It's not. I know what it is. You're bad. They're not good. They're bad. And Trent Baalke has drawn my ire on several occasions because he refuses to go and look backwards. He refuses. How do you not do a job and not pay attention to historical precedents that you set? I just don't understand that. What it is you're ducking and hiding from responsibility. You say you have all the answers. You say nobody else understands. You worked in scouting. You've done this and you've done that. Well, guess what happens? You don't have to stand up in front of a podium every week like Doug Pederson and take that whooping from people. And then when you do stand up, you just say, I'm not looking backwards. I'm looking forward. And I don't talk about past drafts. So it's almost as if Trent is a one-trick pony. He's only good when he has something he wants to tell you. He's never going to answer a question about anything. And it leads to everyone else speculating and pointing fingers. So I'm going to take all the speculation out of it, and I'm going to tell you why the way this team plays on the field and the way that they conduct themselves tells me every single thing that I need to know about this team. I'm going to tell you in segment number 2 why the losing has exposed it all. You don't even have to ask Doug Pederson, Trent Baalke, or anybody else to help you understand it. All you got to do is watch the tape. We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Hillsdale College. Never too late to get smarter. It's always a chance for you to stop wasting time scrolling through stuff that just keeps your mind numb all the time sometimes, when you could actually broaden your horizons. And time is our most precious commodity. So don't wait until scrolling through some mind-numbing content for hours and hours, when you can spend it wisely to improve yourself. Our sponsor at Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and the brand new documentary style course on Marxism, Socialism, and Communism. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in whenever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. hillsdale.edu/locked-on. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Prize Picks. Man, Prize Picks is for real. If your team ain't winning, it don't mean that you can't win. All you got to do is go to Prize Picks and be one of the millions of people to win you some money. Just download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Let me repeat that again. It's Locked On NFL, all one word, LOCKEDON NFL. That is your code to use to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. It can be just you against Prize Picks. Just select between 2 and 6 player stat projections and answer more or less. You get them all right, you can win a whole bunch of money. In fact, you can win up to 100 times your money if you do it a certain way. All right. So make sure you download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. Thank you always for making us your first listen. We talked about what the problem is, and we admit it. None of us absolutely know what that problem is specifically. But what we do know is no need to even try to figure that out and break down the equation. You don't have to pull out the Pythagorean theorem or anything else to try to put some formula into it that's going to give you the answer. There are too many variables here. And the way to get around that is just let everybody go and reboot this whole thing and start it over. They don't have the answers, man. If they had the answers, they'd do something about it. Or if they had the answers and then had the players that could help them do something about it, they would. They can't. And for some reason, Doug says the dudes haven't let go of the rope. Everybody's still trying, but he also admits that they're tired. I think they're more tired mentally than anything. The defense may be more physically tired because they can't get off the field because of the offense. But Doug has said, don't point at them, man. If anything, point at me. It all starts with me. And that's very big of him to say that. But at some point, it gets kind of cliche-ish, right? Especially after a start to the year where he's been at the podium and he says, we can't play for him. All we can do is call plays. Well, at some point, I get that. And it's true and it's factual. You can't play for them. They're grown people. They're getting paid to play for themselves. I don't think anybody asked them to play for them, though. I just think people asked them to explain to him what happened. And Doug doesn't throw his own team and players under the bus as much as people like to think, even though he said some critical things of Trevor that have been true. But that's where we are. He can say something true about Trevor Lawrence, and then all of a sudden, because there are so many other problems, everyone makes it look like he's trying to use Trevor Lawrence as a scapegoat. So at this point, if you can't say something that's correct without people making it seem like you're trying to duck and hide behind making a correct statement, at some point you have to realize that maybe it needs to be started over. And that's where we get to Shad Khan. Losing exposes everything, because losing it's not going to change with your excuses. It isn't. And that's why I made such a big deal about yesterday's game being a side-by-side comparison with a great team. Nothing will tell you exactly who you are than watching your team get punched in the face and drug up and down the field. Nothing will tell you more about yourself than the actual result. Doug said something today I did disagree with. He said he told the players yesterday, well, the team that you guys that we saw out on the field, that's not who you are. I'll be damned if it ain't. That's who it was out there getting whooped. Who else was it? Who else was it? Wasn't the Miami Dolphins. They didn't lose 52-6 yesterday. Wasn't Atlanta Falcons. They lost, but it wasn't the Detroit. Who was it getting a 50 burger put on them? Who was it that gave up 7 straight touchdowns to start a game? If it wasn't them. It is them. It has been them all year. It's every time they win, it's them. Remember when they won those a couple of games, and it's like, I think we can get on a roll here. We can get going. And then they come out the next week and they lay an egg. They also lost to the Chicago Bears in London. They got blown out in that game. Was that not them too? It is them. And it's his team. And this is who they are. It is what it is. Let's just stop making excuses. Let's stop trying to find them. Let's stop trying to figure it out. You can't figure out a mess. A lie, don't care who tells it. A lie is going to be a lie. And I'm not saying that he's lying, but what I am saying is you're lying to yourself if you think that this team has any chance to be a good football team with Doug Pederson and Trent Baalke running it. It's not going to happen. And sometimes it could have happened. You saw them go 9-8, but now that it's gone off the rails, they are not the ones that can put it back on track. And Shad Khan will be a fool to sit there and think that they are. It's time to get the emotion out of it, man. Stop being angry. It just ain't worked out. It ain't worked out. I know that's not good English, but that's what I'm saying. It just has not worked out. We can sit here and I can go through all of these. I can go through all 22 and point out situations. I can point out if coulda, woulda, if this guy hadn't gotten hurt, if that hadn't happened. We can talk about if Trevor hadn't gotten hurt on the Sunday night game or the Thursday night game a couple of years last year against Cincinnati. And then I could say, well, it wouldn't have got hurt if the offensive line was better. If he hadn't dropped the ball while he was running, if he hadn't gone the wrong way on a quarterback sneak. We can sit here and name excuses until the cows come home. I probably run out of paper in this pad that I'm sitting here writing on, because when you won 3 of your last 17 games, all you have are excuses and reasons. And if knowing what the reason is and making an excuse could put games back in the win column, that'll be fine, but it can't. It can't do it. And at some point, if you don't get losing out of your organization, it will permeate through people that aren't even a part of the staff, the coaching staff. It'll be in the building. There's this apathy in the building. Well, people walking around asking questions and blaming and using other stuff as if it has anything to do with them winning or losing. And it's to me like you can always tell when things get rough. At the beginning of the year, it was different. Now it's not. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. But the discomfort of the fan base is what I think is critical here. We got to stop treating the fans of this team like they are what they are, which is people that are going to come back regardless because of their optimism, their hope, and the desire for this team and this city to have a good football team and be recognized for what it is. And I am going to be sick to my stomach if people don't stop saying that this coach or that coach ain't going to want to come here. In the past, that was true. I'll give you that. I had a guy in the building once tell me, I asked him about this coach and that coach. This is 5 years ago. He said, we got to make them want to come here. And what they meant was they were lame ducks. They weren't sure that they had job security. And you have to get somebody to come that knows that they might not be here in a year. That's tough. So that is what I want to talk about, the fix. How do we fix it? We need to make sure that any candidate that wants to come here or look at this job for what it is can actually see what this job is. I'll tell you why I'm going to give Shad Khan some credit. And I know everybody says we ain't listening to that. I think you might need to listen to it to understand how to answer that question. Why Jacksonville? I'll give you an idea of what the fix is here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, segment number 3 here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We talked about what the problem is, talk about how losing exposes it all. If you're willing to take a look at it now, what is the fix? The fix for Shad Khan, for me, is to start over. The fix for him is you have to trust yourself. And this is hard for him to do. I know, man, because he's done this. This will be like the 5th time he's done it. Let's see. He fired Mike Mularkey, but we knew that was going to happen if we want to count that, because Mularkey got a new contract right before he bought the team. He hired he hired Gus Bradley. Then he fired Gus, and then he promoted Doug Marrone. And then he let go of Doug Marrone, and then he hired Urban Meyer. And then we know how that went. He fired Urban Meyer, and then he hired Doug Pederson. And now he's going to probably move on in a different direction and hire somebody else. Here's my issue. And by the way, Doug Pederson said he currently doesn't have a meeting scheduled with Shad Khan, so nothing is imminent as far as he's concerned. There's no meeting. Everyone thought that it may happen today, that they will be moving and shaking, and the day's not over with, but Doug rolled out there and he says, I got a job to do regardless. So yesterday he said, if it happens, it happens. But I do believe that something needs to occur. They need to start over. At some point, Shad is going to have to trust himself to do a job that he has not done well in the past, and that is figure out who he's going to delegate the authority to run his organization. And I put it that way because that's one of the pluses that Shad Khan has. I think anybody that looks at the job in Jacksonville will look at the job as, especially if it's a first-time head coaching candidate, is that a place that if I go in there and do my job, I can do it correctly? Is that a place where I can go in and I can change everything? And this is what fans don't understand sometimes when they say, will he come here? Coaches believe that they can fix anything. How many times have you seen a guy get drafted from your college team that you thought was terrible, but because he was big and strong, coaches drafted him, and 2 years later, they turned him into something? This is because they think if you just give me the talent, I can do it. If you give me the keys to the car, I can drive it. Have you ever gone to a mechanic and he says, what's wrong with it? I say, well, this happened here. See, and he says, yeah, I know what's wrong with it. I don't want to touch it. I can't fix it. That would either mean that he's not qualified or he's lazy, because a mechanic is supposed to fix the car. If he says, yeah, I can fix it, I just don't want to. What do you mean you don't want to? That's like saying what mechanic is going to want to fix this car? The mechanic that is the one that went to school to learn how to fix that car, and the one that does it for a living, that's who wants to fix it. There are only 32 head coaching jobs in the National Football League. 32. If someone has trepidation about joining an organization, usually it's because the ownership is terrible or the ownership is brand new and they don't really trust them. Shad Khan is not a bad owner from the sense of what he does when he functionally operates with a coach. He opens his checkbook and he does anything you ask him to do. Whatever a coach says that he wants or a GM says he wants, he does it. He doesn't stop, block anybody. And he ain't standing up all in the videos after the game in a press conference. And he's not talking to the media and giving all of his information. And I'm talking about Jerry Jones sideways. Yes, I am. Where you have to answer for it. And you ain't going to say nothing. And then he's not going to say something. Then the player say something. And then you got to worry about a week of national podcasts talking about the variance and the difference between what he said and what the player said. Doesn't happen with Shad Khan. All right. The problem is he has delegated the authority to the wrong people. And then in his absence and in his hands-off approach has left the wrong people in charge. Therefore, it appears that he does not care. And that I don't think that's true at all. I think he has a style. His style is to pick the person and allow the person to do their job without his interference, and to support that person with every single thing that person could possibly ask for in order to win. Do I think that's what it is? Yes. Do I think for the most part that he has done a poor job of that? Absolutely. Why do I think that? Because like I said, losing exposes everything. You're either going to get the job done or you ain't going to get it done. Period, point blank, end of discussion. The only problem that we've had, or the only issues that we've been trying to figure out is, okay, at what point do I step in and say, this isn't going the way I want it to go? I think he did that a little bit in the offseason last year when he said this is the best team ever. And I don't think anyone told him that. In fact, Doug said he didn't tell him that, and he doesn't know who told him that. He's not a part of every conversation that Shad Khan has. I think Shad Khan came to that conclusion on his own because I believe he said we won 9 games, 2 years in a row. That's 2 winning seasons in a row. That's something that has never happened under his watch. And after winning those games 2 years in a row and having Trevor Lawrence re-signed and having Trayvon Walker turn the corner and re-signing Josh Allen and making sure they kept their own people and then coming up with a plan for retention where we're going to keep our players, we're going to become a draft and develop team after he spent that last offseason in free agency saying, all right, this is the last time hopefully we do this. That's what he meant, that they had turned a corner as an organization. They re-signed Tyson Campbell. When's the last time you've seen in 2 off seasons the Jaguars re-signed 2 players on one side of the ball? They signed Tyson Campbell, Josh Hines-Allen, extended Foye Oluokun, then reached across and gave Trevor Lawrence the biggest contract in team history, drafted and hit on Brian Thomas Jr., okay? It looked like everything was coming up daisies and roses, but they still haven't won. And you know why they haven't won? Because they're just not as good as they thought they were. Nobody told him that. I think he came to that conclusion on his own. To the people that think that he is a bad owner, I think you're wrong. I don't think he's a bad owner in terms of, and what we're talking about here is not his record. I'm not talking about the organization as a whole. I'm talking about to a potential coach, he's a godsend. The problem is whoever's running the team from a day-to-day basis has to be better. Maybe that means more than one person. Maybe that means an executive vice president to oversee everything, to put pressure on the GM, the new GM, hopefully not the same old GM. Maybe it's a coach that's a little bit more of a taskmaster and not such a player's coach. Maybe it's a combination of all 3 being in lockstep. And I know he tried that before with Doug Marrone, Tom Coughlin, and Dave Caldwell right smack in the middle. Just because the structure, you tried that structure and it didn't work, doesn't mean the structure doesn't work. It just means you may have had the wrong people or some combination of the wrong people in that structure. He needs to start over. He needs to start over. If he's not good at football, he needs to delegate authority and put somebody in place that is good at football. If he's going to trust somebody, he needs to trust somebody with a track record or that comes from an organization of winning. Trent Baalke had neither when he hired him, and that's the problem. That was a mistake from the very beginning, and everybody said that. Your leader of your franchise has to be able to have reverence. And what that means is people can fear him, but it's the fear of reverence. They fear him so much they want to please him. They want to sat like you would your grandmother or your grandfather or your pops or your moms. Like, I don't want to disappoint that person. That's what it has to be. It shouldn't be fear that you're going to get fired or fear that you're going to get cut or fear, or it shouldn't be all the finger pointing that goes on. And that's why I say there's no room in this situation for finger pointing. The only finger that needs to be pointed is when you tell everybody thank you and goodbye and point to the parking lot and say, go ahead and leave now. We're going to start this thing all over again. That's it, man. No finger pointing, nothing personal, none of that stuff. What it is for me is it all needs to be blown up and they need to start completely over. And if they do anything short of that, mark my words, they are digging a grave for themselves in the future. Start over. It's the only way it's going to get better. Make sure you tap into Locked On NFL, the other show that I do every day that takes up a lot of my time, right? Locked On NFL. Tyler Rowland comes on in the morning and I'm in the afternoon. You can get it. It's a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of local experts. Make sure you check us out every single day. All right, we'll be back with more news. If there's news of any movement in this organization, we'll definitely have emergency podcasts or breaking news or whatever to let you know. Until then, you guys take care of each other. There's a bye week, so there's no game. So we'll see what happens. You guys take care. We'll see you next time.